I am doing this video from this angle because this will allow me, this position, this posture, will allow me to fully express and fully embrace my frustration with current issues. Earlier today, I got in an argument on Facebook, actually last night, I got on an argument on Facebook with some people who told me that long story short, eventually got around to telling me, I should say, that if you call the police on black people, you are furthering white supremacy. And so I countered with the example of, well, what about my next door neighbor who has a chronic problem of playing her music too loud? And if you knock on her door and ask her to turn it down, she starts screaming at you at the top of her lungs. And I actually got a recording of this, of her screaming at me, that I showed to the apartment management, the complex management. I was advised that when she did that, I should call the police and report a noise violation. So are they saying, when they say, when I do that, which by the way, the apartment management board at my complex is entirely black, they advised me to call the police and report a noise violation. And my question to those people that I was arguing with is doing that furthering white supremacy? Because I have, one time I asked my upstairs neighbor to turn her music down. I went up and knocked on the door. Also, both of these are black women, by the way. I went upstairs and knocked on my upstairs neighbor's door, and she answered the door and said, "Hi, is the music too loud?" And I said, "Yeah, if you could turn it down, that'd be great." And she said, "Sure, no problem." And that was it. That was all there was to it. Is expecting people to be neighborly and respectful of other people's just generally respectful of other people's needs furthering white supremacy? I mean, it's like we go into this wacko, highfalutin academic interpretation of everything. And I made a video about that. And I took the video down because I felt like it was just petty and silly and not something really worth commenting on. And then people started posting on Facebook about the riots that are going on in Minneapolis. Now, the context here is that a man in Minneapolis recently died because a police officer kneeled down on his windpipe during an arrest. And by the way, the officers have all been fired, and they are now considering the city is now considering, or the law enforcement I should say, is now considering whether or not to charge them with manslaughter. I believe that the officers involved, should be charged with manslaughter, and they should be punished. They should be severely punished, and by severely I mean decades worth of jail time. I don't personally believe in the death penalty, but decades worth of jail time. They should be punished. Also, in relation to my earlier question about how calling the police on blacks is somehow furthering white supremacy, I understand the idea. I understand that it is wrong to use the police as a weapon. There's this woman, Amy Cooper, who recently called the police on a black man, because he asked her to put her dog on a leash in accordance with with a city park's leash law. And she told him that she was going to call the police and tell them that a black man was threatening her. I understand that that is racist. I understand that that woman is functioning off of a sense of white privilege and entitlement. I understand that she is using the police as a weapon. I get that. But to suggest that calling the police on black people in general is furthering white supremacy is absolutely absurd. So if a black person commits a crime, if I am mugged or assaulted or attacked or burglarized or something, and the perpetrator happens to be black, I just don't call the police. I just let that slide. I just let that go. And are we seriously at a point now where we're saying you never ever call the police about anything involving a black person ever? What if it's white collar crime? What about Bill Cosby? Bill Cosby's black. Do we just not do we not take action against Bill Cosby because he's black? And of course, I asked these questions to the people that were confronting me on Facebook, and they couldn't answer. They wouldn't give me an answer. All they would do is say, "Look, you clearly are blinded by your white privilege." Da, 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 da. And these are white people, by the way. And it's like, you are clearly blinded by your white privilege and your white fragility, and you need to be an ally, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we live in a world where logic and reason and sanity has completely gone out the window. So now we come around to the riots in Minneapolis. And I have friends who are, all of them, very sane, very intelligent, very capable, very accomplished people who are commending the rioters. And let's review what's happened here. The officers have already been fired. They are currently considering charging them with manslaughter. That is still on the table. There is still a strong possibility that justice will be done and should be done. And these people that I'm reading on Facebook are trying to draw a comparison between the riots that are happening in Minneapolis and the Tea Party riots. So, my question then would be, if you want to draw that direct comparison, you have to ask, are these people planning to overthrow the government altogether and establish a new country? Is that what they're doing? Because that's what you would have to do to establish the comparison to the Tea Partiers. And the reason they are making this comparison is because people are looting major department stores in Minneapolis in the course of the riots. And their supporters on Facebook are trying to draw a parallel between the rioters, between the Boston Tea Party and the people that are looting department stores. I don't think that the people who are looting department store and the argument that's being made is, oh well, they're not targeting mom and pop stores, they're targeting the major corporations because they're trying to send a message to the government. It looks to me like they're just stealing shit. The Boston Tea Partiers were destroying merchandise to interrupt a trade route. These people are just taking these things for themselves. And I'll tell you this, I've been in the midst of some riots, people. I lived in Boston when I went to college. I have been on the street, not participating in riots, but I have been for a first-hand witness to riots where the police were called and riot police were called in to restore order. Never did it occur to me that I had the right to go steal stuff from retail outlets because there was a riot underway. So, here's the thing. I'm opposed to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a racist and a piece of shit. Donald Trump is scum, and he is protected, he is insulated by a group of people who that 30% of the country that will always be behind him no matter what, that support his every action no matter how ridiculous and crazy it is. He is protected by that group of people that will swoop in and justify and seek to justify everything that he does. Flip that perspective around, and you have people that are trying to justify the destruction of public and private property in the riots in Minneapolis. because apparently things have been so bad for so long that we've got to resort to this. Well, I'll put my cards on the table for why I'm worried about this. I live in a very black area, in a very black part of the country. I moved here giving absolutely no thought whatsoever to the racial demographics of the people around me because, you know, 4 years ago when I moved in, I didn't give a shit. And I still wouldn't give a shit, except it kind of worries me because you just can't, no matter how morally justified you think they are, you just can't trust a rabid, rioting mob to do the right thing, no pun intended, to to keep the moral high ground in mind, to exercise any degree of restraint and temperance. And yeah, I'm scared. I don't want my door broken down. I don't want to be. I don't want my home vandalized or my property destroyed. I don't want to come to physical harm. I don't want my life to be ended. I don't want to be put in a situation where I'm forced to defend myself and then public support is not on my side and people start calling for my head. Those things scare me. And I am sick to death of people on social media acting like absolute anarchy, violent anarchy, is some sort of positive thing. Protests can be used to affect change. This is not protesting. This is just madness and insanity. It's like Nietzsche said, insanity is rare in individuals and the rule in crowds. God, people, just stop rioting. Stop rioting and start protesting. Organize a protest against this injustice, and it is an injustice. But don't go crazy. I'm gonna, there was I'm not going to say who the commentator was because it was a controversial commentator, so I just want and it's not really about this person, it's about something somebody told them. But there was a commentator I saw who he was being interviewed, and he talked about visiting a Holocaust memorial in Germany, and there was a woman who, I believe she had been in Auschwitz as a little girl or something like that, and he talked to her, and he said, how do we keep this kind of thing from happening again in the future? And the woman said to him, you have to stay sane. When everyone else is going crazy around you, you have to stay sane. And that is a very powerful and very important statement. And to all of my white liberal friends who are championing the rioters in Minneapolis, I challenge you to stop and think about what you are doing. You are championing the rioters in Minneapolis because you are not in Minneapolis right now. You are hundreds, if not thousands of miles removed from those riots. And it's real easy to sit on your computer and cheer and be a keyboard warrior when you have nothing at stake. But as somebody who has been in a street, who had not partaken in, but been on the ground during street riots, for everything from, everything from anti-government protests to the most violent one I ever saw was because the New England Patriots won the Super Bowl, who has seen violence up close, who has seen people die in front of him. I watched a person die, and the paramedics note the time of death in front of me. Somebody who looked down at the ground and realized he was standing in about 3 inches of blood. Uh, Somebody who has watched cars and buildings go up in flames and the cops bash people over the head with riot gear. Somebody in riot gear. Some people are, as somebody who has seen all of that and has been up close and personal with riots and seen what it looks like when it looks like the world is coming to an end. This is not, it's really, really arrogant to protest that, and very short-sighted, I'm sorry, very short-sighted to promote that and cheer for that when you're hundreds of miles away from it and insulated. We are in a crisis point in this country, and I have people on the left and the right telling me to wake up. I have people on the left telling me to wake up because I won't get behind their crazy, wacko, socialist solutions for everything. I have people on the right telling me to wake up because I won't get behind their crazy, wacko, nationalist solutions for everything. I live in a world now that is split. The country I live in, is divided into nationalists and socialists. And when that's the division between nationalists and socialists, the last thing you want is bipartisanship. I mean, that's the world we live in. We live in a world of people who look at National Socialism and think the national part is bad. You know, half the people look at National Socialism and think the nationalist part is bad and the socialist part is okay, and half the people look at National Socialism and think the socialist part is bad and the nationalist part is okay. But what that woman said is absolutely true. We have got to remain sane. And I know it feels right to go ballistic right now on it. I know it feels right on an absolutely visceral level. Look, it's kind of like the guy who punched Richard Spencer in the face, and we're actually having a discussion about whether or not it's okay to punch people in the face for their stated beliefs, and everyone's like, oh, he's a Nazi and America's against Nazis, and so it's like, wait a minute. First of all, no, Richard Spencer does not identify as a Nazi. But at the same time, I can understand wanting to punch Richard Spencer. He's one of those people that seems immensely punchable with his smug grin and his psychopathic glare. He seems like a real life Patrick Bateman. He's not a good person. He is an utterly vile human being. But when he was punched, all that was happening was he was standing there talking to people about what he believes. And it's okay to do that in this country, no matter what you believe. You have the right to stand there and peacefully talk about it. And get the fuck over this idea that there are certain ideas that constitute physical force. Because they make you feel bad, and the physical feeling of feeling bad is a violent assault on you. Or because if that person won, then they would get to, the end result of their winning would be the incursion of violence. Therefore, they are committing an act of violence. No, they are innocent, wholly innocent, until they commit that act of violence or directly and reasonably state their intent to commit that act of violence. Stop going insane. Stop rioting. The Joker in... think about the Joker for a minute. And there is a lot of... there has been a huge cultural discussion around the movie Joker, which I thought was a phenomenal movie. And, you think about the rioting that occurs in that movie because of what the Joker does. And yes, the Joker is acting from a position of from the moral high ground. I mean, he kills... I'm sorry, I should say he's operating from a philosophical moral high ground in that his actions don't give him the moral high ground because he kills innocent people. But he's philosophically, he's acting from a position of the moral high ground. He's the underdog, yes. But those riots, the riots that happen, are not a good solution. Those riots give rise to villainy, his villainy, and using him as a great character. Look at Batman: The Killing Joke, either the film adaptation or or the graphic novel itself. What does he do in Batman: The Killing Joke? He puts Police Commissioner Gordon through a series of tortures, psychological tortures intended to drive the man insane. And in the course of that, he tells the Joker, this is paraphrasing, but he tells Commissioner Gordon, and this is paraphrasing, he says that when you are faced with the horrors of the world and how horrible human existence is, there is an option. You have an escape hatch. You have a door marked exit, and it is madness. In the movie version, he sings a song where he says, "Trade doom and gloom for a rubber room and injections twice a day." And the song, Hamill does the song great. I go loony. It's just perfectly done. But that's what the Joker is saying. The Joker is saying, look, life can get so bad that you can escape your problems, and you can escape responsibility for your actions, and you can escape having to make moral judgments about anything if you just go completely insane. That's all you have to do, is go completely insane. And, Batman represents the other side of the coin on that, of maintaining social order and maintaining sanity and control. And that's the thing. Yes, we want the world to get better. We want to combat villainy. We want the world to get better. The Joker and Batman are both reacting to the same horrible world, but they have different world views about how to deal with it. And Batman's worldview, and now granted, I know, I've been decrying vigilantism in this video, and Batman is a vigilante, but he's also a fictional vigilante that serves as a philosophical archetype for sake of discussion, and that's the point. We have to handle this crazy world we live in. So who's better, the Joker or Batman? I understand that it feels good to go the route of the Joker. I understand that. I understand that it feels viscerally satisfying to go batshit crazy and destroy everything. I get it. I get the appeal. But are we going to get the world we want out of it? No. You don't. That insanity is not a path to a better world. That insanity just leads to more insanity. What was it, 10 years ago, we had the Trayvon Martin thing? And what was the hashtag back then? Keep calm for Trayvon. Like, what happened to that? What happened to, look, this is a tense situation, but we're gonna get through it together. We're gonna be here for everybody. There's Harlan Ellison used to make this point, or use this analogy, that there is a man stops by the side of the road, and he sees an ant lying on its back like this, lying on its back with all of its limbs pointing up in the air, and the man says to the ant, "What are you doing?" And the ant says, "Someone told me that the sky is falling." And the man says, "And you think doing that is going to help?" And the ant said, "I do what I can."